This is William Michael of the Classical Liberal Arts Academy, and in this talk I would like to provide students with some help in reading through and understanding the first lesson in Theophrastus Characters, which is on the Dissembler. Theophrastus Characters is a great course for students who are preparing to study Aristotle's ethics. It's good for students to already have some experience with sacred scripture and with Aesop's fables before they start Theophrastus Characters. But the Characters by Theophrastus is a course that's a great preparation for future study in classical ethics. What I'd like to do in these talks is simply walk through the lesson that students will need to work through on their own and make sure that everything in the lesson is clear, and also, as I usually do, draw some applications of the lesson for our Catholic life. So let's begin and study together the Dissembler in Theophrastus Characters. Every word and every action of the dissembler is an artifice by which he labors to conceal some evil intention. So the dissembler is an evil person, but he pretends to be good. Every word and every action of the dissembler is an artifice or a trick by which he labors to conceal his evil intentions. A man of this sort approaches his enemy with professions of friendship. He's a friendly guy. But his friendliness is not sincere. He's always covering up some evil plan, some evil desire. He flatters those against whom he is secretly plotting mischief. Privately, he's planning to do evil to someone. But he covers this up when he talks with this person by flattering the person instead, saying all kinds of good things dishonestly about him to cover up his evil plan. He condoles or grieves with them on the day of their calamity. So even though he is secretly happy to see his enemies suffer some loss, he pretends to feel bad for them, and he condoles with them or grieves with them. Not truly. He dissembles and pretends to grieve with them. To one who has defamed him, someone who has spoken evilly about him, he doesn't get angry. He doesn't respond with nasty words. He offers his forgiveness. Again, not sincerely, but as a cover-up of his evil plans. With patience, he receives contumely. Contumely is insulting speech. So when people are nasty to him, he doesn't respond with anger. He's not quickly irritated by that behavior, but he stays calm. He receives their insulting speech patiently, but not truly. He's pretending to be patient. He soothes with blandishments, with flatteries. He soothes them or comforts them who resent the injuries they have sustained from his villainy. So when he does something evil and hurts another person, he pretends to comfort them with kind words and friendly talk. The dissembler, from mere habit, because it's his way of acting, will evade any direct application that may be made to him. He's always up to something. He's always sketchy. And therefore, when you speak to him and ask him to help with something or do something, he always has to find a way out of it because he's already at work with his own plans. And because he's crafty, he comes up with clever ways, clever responses to get out of any direct application or appeal to him for help. He'll say, for example, "Call on me tomorrow," to one who seeks to converse with him on business that admits of no delay. To elude inquiry, he doesn't want to answer someone's questions because he's trying to cover things up that he's actually doing, and to try to get away from their questions, to elude their inquiry. He will pretend that he has just returned from a journey, and he's got to get someplace else. He will say that he came home only last evening, or that he is too ill to attend to any business at the moment. This is, of course, all dishonest. He never acknowledges that he has actually commenced or begun an undertaking, but he professes to still be deliberating on the affair. He's not sure yet. He's still thinking about it, even though he has actually already begun the work. Everything he does is sneaky, because he's secretly plotting evil, secretly working to do evil things, and always covering up his evil plans by his actions and words, none of which are honest. He tells those who would borrow money from him, or who demand a sum that he has subscribed to a contribution. In other words, he promised to support something, and they come to him and ask for the money that he promised to give, or they come to ask to borrow money from him. And he responds that he doesn't have any money. Business hasn't been very good. He's low on cash, and so on. But when trade is dull, when he's actually not doing well, he boasts of the success of his dealings, of his business. He feigns or pretends not to have attended to what he has in fact heard. He professes not to have observed what just passed before his eyes. He takes care to forget his promises. He is fertile in evasions. That means he's very clever, very resourceful in coming up with excuses. He is fertile in evasions, in getting out of things. At one moment, he proposes to take an affair into consideration, and at the next moment, he claims to know nothing of the business. He is amazed, or acts amazed, at what is told to him, or he says that it accords or agrees exactly with his opinion. He makes himself remarkable by his frequent use of certain phrases, such as, "I am fain to doubt it," "I don't understand your meaning," "I'm vastly surprised," or, if it does suit his purpose, he will say, "I'm not the man you take me for," "No such thing has been said to me before," "What you say is incredible," "Prithee, find someone else to whom you may tell this tale." Prithee means I pray thee. "Truly," he says, I know not whether to think of you or him, the impostor. So the dissembler, he's always saying the opposite of what's true because he's always covering something up. He's always trying to get away with something that's secret by pretending to be something else on the outside. And so after time, after experience and habit of doing this, he collects a whole collection of expressions and responses and excuses that help him to slip out of different discussions and situations. Theophrastus then writes, "Beware of one who employs these artfully woven and often repeated phrases." Beware of these phrases, which commonly serve to cloak or cover the worst designs. A man in whose manners there is no simplicity. Simplicity means singleness. What he says, he means. There's no double meaning. There's no secret meaning. There's no secret. He says what he means. He speaks honestly and truly and clearly. A man in whose manners there is no simplicity, that is a dissembler, whose very word seems to have been studied, is more to be shunned than a viper, more dangerous than a poisonous snake. And we've seen how his behavior is like slithering secretly like a snake. A man in whose manners there is no simplicity, whose every word seems to have been studied, is more to be shunned than a viper. When it says whose every word seems to have been studied, it means that the person doesn't talk naturally, doesn't talk comfortably, but seems like he's always reading off a script, saying things that he prepared to say in advance. Something doesn't seem natural about such a person. They can't speak comfortably and freely. It just doesn't feel natural the way they speak. This is a sign of dissembling. So we've now read Theophrastus's lesson on the dissembler, and we want to answer some basic questions that you'll need to answer if you study the lesson in the academy and complete the lesson assessment. The first question in the assessment is, what character are you studying? And just to be clear, it's the dissembler. The second question asks you to keep a list of vocabulary words that you're not familiar with and to look them up in the Oxford English Dictionary. And if you don't know this, in the Academy, we sponsor the Oxford English Dictionary for all of our students. So you simply need to know the username and password, and you can use the Oxford English Dictionary for all of your studies. It's a very, very great resource, but it's expensive, and so it's good to make use of it since the Academy sponsors it for students. But there are a number of difficult words in this lesson. The word the dissembler, to begin with, is probably an unfamiliar word for most students. Another one is condoles, contumely, blandishments. These were some words we came across in the lesson that are probably unfamiliar, and you should list them when you complete the assessment. Look them up in the Oxford Dictionary and then write their meanings in your assignment when you submit it for grading. Next, you're asked to clearly describe or define this character. Clearly describe or define. Now, this is a challenge for students because sometimes students will oversimplify the character. For example, some might say the dissembler is a man who lies, but that's not really what the dissembler is. He's not simply a liar. There's more to him than that. And you've got to make sure that you prove that you see and understand the detail of the character that's being studied. He's more than a liar. He's not simply a liar. And we learned in the first paragraph what the dissembler is. We read, "Every word, every action of the dissembler is an artifice by which he labors to conceal some evil intention." He's a man with evil intentions who seeks to conceal those intentions or hide them. He's not necessarily a liar because sometimes he may say things that are literally true, but he says them in a way that's misleading because he's covering up his evil intentions. So when you answer this question where you're asked to describe the character, make sure you don't oversimplify it, but pay attention to all the details in the lesson so you get it exactly right. Next, we're asked to give an example of this character's behavior and explain how it shows his character. Give an example and explain how it shows his character. Theophrastus gives us a number of examples, so you can just pick one of these. I recommend you pick the one that you think is the most clear and easy to understand. I think that one of the most clear examples is how he proposes to take an affair into consideration, but then at another time says he knows nothing of it. And one of the keys to catching evil people in their speech is self-contradiction. So always watch out. As a red flag, look out for self-contradiction. Men, when they're being dishonest and not speaking with simplicity, they will have a difficult time remembering all of the things that they've said, and they will often be caught contradicting themselves. And when we find a person contradicting himself, that should be a red flag for us that something's wrong. The next question, why ought we to watch out for men of this character? Well, it's very simple. They're seeking to do some kind of evil to us. They're seeking to harm us. We may not know exactly what they have planned, but they have something evil planned, and it could be terrible. It could be something that destroys our whole life, destroys our career, gets us in trouble. So we've got to be very careful. We've got to be careful that we don't let these snake-like people get into our lives where they can start to do real damage. We want to be discerning and keep them out, not let them slither in and start to get a hold of things. We have to be careful because they mislead us by doing things that we like. They say nice things to us. They act in a friendly way to us. They forgive us. They are calm and patient when maybe we do something bad to them. And so we're inclined to think that they're actually good people, and that's what makes them so dangerous. They're deceitful. So we've got to watch out for men of this character. Anytime people flatter you, you should be suspicious and careful. The next question asks, what signs ought we to look for to identify this character in our lives? What signs ought we to look for? Well, we should watch out for an unnatural friendliness. Life is hard. It's okay to be sober, to be serious, to be quiet. It's okay to be sober and quiet. And when we find people who are unnaturally friendly and flattering, and as Theophrastus said, when we find someone whose language doesn't seem natural or comfortable, it seems like they're saying things they practiced saying or read off a script, these are some signs that we ought to watch out for. Then we're asked, what character from history or literature can you think of who is an example of this character? What examples can you think of? I immediately begin to think of modern politicians. Modern politicians never answer questions, and an honest person wouldn't do that. Modern politicians pretend that they have no idea what's going on, that they haven't seen or heard anything, they don't know any of the details of any of the events. They slip away from questions, they say they don't have time for questions, and yet they're supposed to be representatives of the people. So it seems strange that the representative of the people can never answer a question from the people in a straightforward or simple way. So I think a good example of a dissembler is found in most modern politicians who, if you pay attention to their press conferences and things they say, you'll see they all talk the same way. They talk in a studied and unnatural manner. And you can sense that when you watch or listen to them talk. Question 8 asks, in what ways have you acted like this character? And it's very simple. If there's a time in your life where you wanted to do something bad to someone, like take something from them or mislead them, you may have pretended to be friendly or pretended to say something nice about them, but really you were dissembling. A good example of dissembling in the Christian life is to claim to be a Christian in public when privately you want to sin and you really don't want to follow Christ. But when it's time for church to get dressed up and to go in front of other people, maybe even to be confirmed or receive communion, you pretend to be a Christian while privately you commit all sorts of sins or seek to do evil. That's dissembling. What steps can you take? The last question, what steps can you take to avoid acting like this character? The answer was to be simple. To be simple. Jesus says in the Beatitudes, blessed are the pure in heart. Blessed are the pure in heart. What you can do to avoid acting like a dissembler is to work to be pure in heart, to love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and to love your neighbor because you love God. To be simple and pure in heart can help you to avoid dissembling, to realize that anything that you need in life you can obtain with God's help through honest work. There's no need for flattery. There's no need for deceiving people. There's no need for dissembling if you're content with what God gives you. So these are some steps that we can take to avoid acting like the dissembler. And that's the last question for the assessment. So we've studied the first lesson in Theophrastus Characters, which is on a character called the Dissembler. What I'd like for you to do now is to read this lesson, study this lesson on your own, make sure everything is clear, and complete the lesson assessment. If you've got any questions about this lesson, or if there's anything that you'd simply like to talk about or ask questions about, post those questions in the student forum on the course page, where I and other students can read and respond to them. If you've got a question that you don't feel comfortable posting on a forum, then you can write to me directly. Just send an email to mail@classicalliberalarts.com. So I hope that you've enjoyed this first lesson on the Dissembler in Theophrastus Characters. It's time for you to study the lesson yourself and complete the lesson assessment. Submit it to me and I'll review and grade it for you, and we'll move on together through the study of Theophrastus Characters. I hope you find that helpful. God bless your studies.